The lighthouse stood on the cliff, a sentinel of stone and glass. Years of salty air and sea spray had weathered its facade. Now it was a canvas of decay, cracked paint peeled like scabs. The lantern room, once a beacon, was dark, a single black eye staring out to sea. The lighthouse had once been a guide for sailors, a symbol of hope. Now it was a spectre on the horizon. Its presence was a warning, a silent testament to some forgotten tragedy. Fishermen gave it a wide berth. Their nets never cast near its shadow. Their whispers spoke of strange lights, and the mournful cries carried on the wind. The lighthouse, they said, was best left undisturbed. The path to the lighthouse was overgrown, swallowed by thorns and brambles. It was as if nature itself conspired to keep people away, to protect the secrets the lighthouse held. The locals knew the stories, passed down through generations. Tales whispered around crackling fires, each telling more chilling than the last. They spoke of the lighthouse keeper, a solitary man, driven mad by the isolation. They said he walked the shore at night, muttering to himself, searching the waves for something he could never find. Some nights they swore they could hear him. His voice carried on the wind, a mournful wail that sent shivers down their spines. There were whispers of a storm, a night of fury unlike any other. The night the lighthouse went dark, the night the keeper disappeared. Some said he was swept away by the waves. Others believed he threw himself from the top, driven mad by the loneliness. No one dared go near the lighthouse after that. Fear had a firm grip on their hearts. The lighthouse became a monument to the unknown, a place where shadows danced and whispers taunted. Old Thomas, the fisherman, remembered the night clearly. The storm raged, waves pounded the cliffs like angry fists. The wind howled like a banshee. He had been mending his nets when he saw it, a flash of light from the lighthouse, then darkness. He had rushed to the shore, his heart pounding in his chest. The storm was unlike anything he'd ever seen. He strained his eyes against the wind and rain, searching for any sign of the keeper. But there was nothing. The next morning, the storm had passed, but the silence was deafening. The lighthouse stood empty. The keeper was gone. His disappearance was never solved. It became another chapter in the lighthouse's dark history. The villagers searched for days, combing the beach and the cliffs, but they found no trace of the keeper. He had vanished without a trace, his fate a mystery lost to the wind and the waves. Section 4. A Dare in the Dark. Years passed. The lighthouse stood forgotten, a crumbling relic on the cliffs. Then, one night, a group of teenagers stumbled upon it, drawn by the stories and the thrill of the unknown. They were young, their laughter echoing in the stillness. Unaware of the darkness that awaited them, they dared each other to go closer, to climb the cliffs and see the lighthouse up close. The leader, a boy named Mark, scoffed at their fears. He was fearless, or so he pretended. He wouldn't be deterred, not by some silly ghost stories. They crept closer to the lighthouse, their footsteps crunching on the gravel path. The air grew colder, heavy with a silence that pressed down on them. The laughter died in their throats, replaced by a nervous tension. Section 5. Ascent into Fear. The door creaked open with a groan, as if disturbed after a long slumber. Inside, the air was thick with dust and decay. The smell of salt and mildew hung heavy. The teenagers coughed, their eyes adjusting to the gloom. They stepped inside. The staircase was a spiral of shadows leading up into the heart of the lighthouse. Each step creaked in protest, the sound echoing through the empty space. Mark led the way, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. They reached the top. The lantern room was a jumble of broken glass and rusted metal. The once powerful lens lay shattered on the floor, a testament to the storm's fury. It was then they noticed it, a book lying open on a table. The book was old, its leather cover cracked and faded. The pages were yellowed with age, the handwriting spidery and faint. It was the keeper's logbook, a record of his last days. Mark picked it up, his fingers tracing the faded ink. Gap 3S, Section 6, The Lighthouse's Secret. As Mark's fingers traced the faded ink on the logbook, a sudden draft swept through the room, causing the pages to flutter. The teenagers exchanged uneasy glances. Mark's flashlight beam caught something peculiar, a faint outline on the floor, barely visible under the layers of dust and debris. With a sense of urgency, they began to clear the debris. Beneath the broken glass and rusted metal, they discovered a trapdoor, cleverly concealed and long forgotten. They hesitated for a moment, the weight of their discovery sinking in. Then, with a collective deep breath, they pried it open. The hidden chamber beneath the lighthouse was a stark contrast to the decay above. The air was cool and dry, undisturbed by time. Ancient artifacts lined the walls, nautical instruments, faded maps, and relics from a bygone era. But it was the diary, resting on a stone pedestal in the center of the room, that drew them in. Its cover was adorned with strange symbols, and the pages within were filled with entries that chronicled the dark history of the lighthouse keepers. Tales of isolation, madness, and a curse that plagued each generation. The final entry revealed a chilling truth. The lighthouse was not just a beacon for ships, but a prison for something far more sinister. As the teenagers read the last words, a sense of dread settled over them. They realized they had uncovered secrets that were meant to stay buried, and now those secrets were stirring once more. Gap 3S, Section 7, The Ghostly Apparition. Just as the teenagers were absorbing the weight of the diary's revelations, a cold chill swept through the hidden chamber. Mark's breath turned to mist as the temperature plummeted. The air grew heavy, and an unsettling silence filled the room. Suddenly, the faint sound of footsteps echoed from the staircase above. Gap 3S. The flashlight beams trembled as the group turned their gaze upward. Emerging from the shadows was a ghostly figure, translucent and ethereal. It was dressed in the tattered uniform of a lighthouse keeper from a bygone era. The apparition's eyes, hollow and filled with sorrow, locked onto Mark. Gap 3S. The ghostly figure raised a hand as if to warn them. Its voice was a whisper, carried on the wind. Leave this place. The secrets you seek are bound by a curse. Uncovering them will only bring suffering. Gap 3CS. The teenagers stood frozen, hearts pounding in their chests. The ghost presence filled the room with an overwhelming sense of dread. The walls seemed to close in, the relics around them casting long, eerie shadows. Gap 3S. Suddenly, the ghostly figure began to fade, its form dissolving into the darkness. Heed my warning, it whispered one last time before vanishing completely. The room was once again silent, but the tension lingered, palpable and suffocating. Gap 3S. The teenagers exchanged fearful glances, realizing the gravity of their situation. They had uncovered secrets that were never meant to be found, and now they were being warned to leave. But would they heed the warning? Or would curiosity drive them deeper into the lighthouse's dark history? Gap 3S. As they stood in the eerie silence, they knew one thing for certain. Their adventure had taken a turn for the terrifying. The ghostly apparition's warning echoed in their minds, leaving them with a choice that could determine their fate. Gap 3S. Section 8. The Final Revelation. The warning from the ghostly apparition hung heavy in the air as the teenagers gathered their courage. Determined to uncover the truth, Mark, Sarah and Emily returned to the diary, flipping through its fragile pages with renewed urgency. Every entry seemed to pulse with a hidden meaning, a secret code waiting to be deciphered. Gap 3S. Sarah's eyes widened as she stumbled upon a passage that detailed a ritual, a binding curse placed upon the lighthouse by its first keeper. It was said that anyone who disturbed the relics within would awaken the spirits trapped inside, doomed to relive their torment for eternity. Gap 3S. Mark traced the faded ink with his finger, connecting the dots between the diary's entries and the events they had experienced. The whispers on the wind, the vanishing keeper, the ghostly apparition. They were all pieces of the same dark puzzle. Gap 3S. Emily gasped as she realized the final clue, a hidden compartment in the lighthouse's foundation where the keeper's most guarded secrets were buried. They had to find it to uncover the truth and perhaps put the spirits to rest. Gap 3S. With a sense of dread and determination, they descended further into the lighthouse's depths. The air grew colder, the shadows darker. Gap 3S. Finally, they reached a stone wall with an inscription barely visible in the dim light. Mark pressed on a loose stone and the wall creaked open to reveal a hidden chamber. Gap 3S. Inside, they found an ancient chest, its wood splintered and decayed. With trembling hands, Sarah opened it to reveal a collection of artifacts, an old, rusted key, a broken compass, and a leather-bound book. Gap 3S. The book's title was barely legible, but it read, "The Keeper's Last Testament." As Mark opened the book, a cold wind swept through the chamber, extinguishing their flashlights. Gap 3S. In the pitch black, the words seemed to glow, revealing the final, chilling revelation. The keeper had sacrificed his soul to protect the lighthouse from a malevolent force, a dark entity that sought to consume all who dared to uncover its secrets. Gap 3S. The teenagers realized the gravity of their discovery. The spirits were not just warning them, they were pleading for their help. Gap 3S. To break the curse, they had to confront the dark entity and release the trapped souls. The room grew colder, the air thick with anticipation. Gap 3S. The final revelation had been made, but the true horror was yet to come. As they stood in the darkness, the weight of their task pressed down on them. Gap 3S. Would they have the courage to face the malevolent force and free the spirits, or would they become the lighthouse's next victims? Gap 3S. The story concluded with a chilling suspense, leaving the audience on the edge of their seats, eager to see what fate had in store for the brave teenagers.